Investors have been trading cautiously this week in the lead up to influential non-farm payroll figures for June. The report will be released tomorrow, but joining me today to discuss his forecast is James Knightley, Senior International Economist at ING. Now, some analysts are expecting to see an addition of 90,000 workers in June, with the unemployment rate holding steady at 8.2%. What are you expecting from the report, and what are the main reasons for this prediction?
Yeah, I think there is perhaps a little bit of upside risk to it now. We've had some survey evidence through this week that's in general been relatively supportive for the idea that we might get a slightly stronger number than the consensus. The ISM employment index was relatively firm. The ADP private sector employment survey was also stronger than expected, while jobless claims have been on a somewhat downward trend of late. The concern, though, I suppose, is that the underlying activity story has perhaps softened a touch. But in general, we'd be there or thereabouts in terms of the consensus view, perhaps a little bit of upside risk.
US manufacturing activity contracted in June for the first time in nearly 3 years, which some say is stark evidence of a slowing economic recovery and that Europe's debt crisis continues to weigh heavy on the US economy. What effects do you think another poor NFP report could mean for the US?
Yeah, I mean, if the growth story is slowing as perhaps the ISM suggests and other indicators have suggested, then that does indicate that the pace of payrolls growth is probably going to slow. The economic uncertainty is not going to make businesses keen to add to their costs by hiring new workers. But I think, we have seen some positives. Gasoline prices are moving lower as well, and that's going to help support the US economy to some extent. So it's still a fairly close call, but certainly a soft payrolls number would perhaps push the market into anticipating QE3 more in the not too distant future.
You mentioned there that disappointing figures may spur the Fed into action, namely in terms of further QE. In your personal opinion, is this the right move to spur on the US economy?
Yeah, I think in terms of the US, the biggest risks remain, one, the fiscal cliff, concerns about the rapid pace of austerity that could be coming in the US's direction next year, and of course also the ongoing Eurozone sovereign debt crisis. And I'm just not sure that further QE is going to resolve either of those. So I think in terms of the long-term growth story, it'd be much better to get action on the fiscal austerity measures, trying to rein those in perhaps a little bit, and seeing ongoing developments in the Eurozone. And unfortunately, both of those are out of the Fed's hands.
And finally, James, the election process is hotting up, and many analysts have attributed the Fed's inaction to playing it safe until the campaign is over. What do you think the US economy is crying out for from its leaders?
I mean, at the moment, the policies are remaining somewhat vague, as is usual the case in these sorts of elections. But I think what's key for the US is getting an agreement on trying to delay or postpone some of the austerity that's due to come in, because all of these ending of Bush-era tax cuts and other payroll tax cuts and the extension of unemployment insurance are all due to end at the end of this year, and that could produce austerity equivalent to about 4% of GDP, which is what Spain is experiencing right now. And we know that the experience of Spain is not a pleasant one, and I think the key for US growth next year is trying to prevent that sort of scale of austerity hitting. So if we can get some sort of political agreement following the election to try and rein that in, that can only be a good thing.
James, thank you for joining me. Sadly, that's all we have time for just now, but click back to Dukascopy for more exclusive interviews. For the moment, goodbye.